All right, Justin Dunford. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to open up our screen share, and then if you don't mind, just kind of telling us a little bit about how you got into painting.
Okay, great. So, my name's Justin Dunford. I actually just kind of have always done art like since I was a kid. Um, I got more into theater, I guess, when I was in around middle school, high school, and so I went to school and actually majored in acting directing at University of Houston. I had never really taken I had taken like maybe two like actual art courses at that time. One at a community college, and then one in high school. And so I kind of was more into theater at that point. So when I graduated, I just always kept painting during this whole time too, just kind of experimenting and doing my own stuff on the side of going to work in school.
Did
But
you
I would
pick
start.
up paint at a certain time, or were you always, did you draw with different material, or do you remember a time when you started kind of switching back
Yeah,
and
I think when I actually like started being more serious with paint was probably when I was about 17 or so. My grandma got me a Bob Ross like oil painting kit, and I had never used like oil paint at all, and probably very little like use with paint like at that up to that point, other than just maybe like house paint or something. And then it became like kind of an interesting thing to me because it's kind of like um an experiment, like every time you would paint you could like figure something else out about how to use the material or what it does when you add certain things to it. Um, it's just like still that way for me. I still kind of like that part of it, just kind of messing around with techniques or adding things to paint.
but yeah, so let's
Yeah,
start
yeah,
talking about some of your art. So I don't know if you can see this. I pulled up,
yeah. I can see.
I think these are all from the same series, if I recall
Yeah,
correctly.
those are all like kind of still lives at night is kind of what the whole thing was.
And are these oil or acrylic or?
Most of these are acrylic. I did do like maybe I don't know. There were like 30 paintings in the series, but most of them actually were in acrylic. But I mixed the paint so it kind of looks more like oil paint.
Yeah, I could
But
see that.
yeah,
What were you inspired by right now? Is this when were you looking at certain artists or because I think
yeah. I mean, yeah. This whole thing was kind of inspired by, uh, like I was living with my grandma at the time, and I only had like I had a full-time job, and was waking up super early, going to work, coming home, taking care of my grandma. So like everything, I had like a very small amount of time to make any art, but I try to paint every day. And so I was doing these kind of automatic paintings, but they turned out to be these kind of still lifes. And I was really getting into like kind of back into like cubist and cubism, and was looking at a lot of stuff like that. I'm watching a lot of older movies and painting at night, so everything kind of has this kind of nighttime kind of feel to it. And I was doing them just like layering and a bunch of different layers of paint over and over until it started to kind of look like something. And then I would kind of keep going, cover things up, bring different things back out, use different texture techniques, and just kind of having fun, because I only had like 2 or 3 hours every night I could paint. So these were kind of like an experiment and just something to do to have fun with, and they turned out to start looking really kind of more interesting and developed. So I turned it into the series, and the guitars kind of, I feel like those became a prominent subject in them because like most of them were kind of by themselves or whatnot. I don't know. I always liked still lives with instruments and food.
don't you feel like the guitars kind of came from like Brock and Picasso and stuff like that for you?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I would say like um, growing up, I went to the museum a lot, and everybody knows about Picasso, but like I don't know, when I was in college, like I started like noticing that, oh, that Picasso I thought was a Picasso was actually not Picasso, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But around that time, I was like getting way into George Rock actually, and like uh, reading about his life, and I just thought he was like such an interesting person. I was like, man, Cubism was really cool. Like, I'm gonna kind of do my own slant on it. So like, my stuff's not Cubist, but it's like more of an interpretation, like a filter of Cubism, you know, like through like a cartoon lens almost or something.
Definitely. So I put these three together, and I know that the one on the left is not the same series, but I think it
Right.
kind of pulls on um,
I think I did that one around the same time. Um,
similar
that
vibe, but a different medium, right? So this is an ink drawing, right? Or
yeah, I did like ink washes with just a brush and ink to kind of practice, you know, keeping yourself sharp on things and just putting a lot of water on before I would mess with anything. Kind of tracing out the drawing with water and then dropping the ink on it.
cool.
Um, yeah, I did a bunch of those too. But
Okay, I'm gonna keep going to because I know we're timed. So again,
right,
these aren't the same series, but I think it shows your style, kind of the colors that you play with. And one of the things I always liked about your art is that you kind of have these characters that pop up. And one of the things that I was thinking about is just kind of you're very cognizant of the colors that you choose. And I know you're really interested in color theory. Can you talk to
right.
a little bit about this palette and kind of maybe some of the decisions you made?
Yeah, so the one on the right is one of the few like actual like I was going for photorealism kind of like a quick version, but like that's actually a painting from life. I painted that. That was the back porch of my grandma's house, and I just she had this old like, you know, kind of like mahogany, I don't know, it was like a dark purple kind of brown porch, and it had been painted like green or something at one time. And so it was peeling up, and I just thought it looked really cool. And it was late at night, so like all those hard shadows were actually hard shadows. I think, you know, matching paint is something that's really challenging. That takes a lot of time to like really get good at. You know, you gotta like be bold and like actually experiment with it, and do a lot of research and figure out, you know, how to do it. Um, before you even try, because it is really difficult. Like, and the one on the left, I was like kind of being influenced by a lot of cartoons at that time. So um, and then the background is kind of this like scenic thing that I was messing with. That's like kind of floating paint and glue, kind of. So it's just, you know, elevates the pigment. But so like that was kind of an experiment that I painted out kind of almost white, and then I was just influenced by, I guess, like Tom and Jerry on that one. So it's like kind of mimicking that, but making it maybe a little more three dimensional.
Mm-hmm. One, I like how you use the texture in the background to kind of make it more interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I found that texture kind of is king, like in painting for me at least. Like if something looks like it has texture, like it's way more interesting than like even these drawings, you know, because like they they're just like on a stark page. Like I think these are like studies or like, you know, just sketches that I've done, but like if I was to put them on a background like that was textured, I think they would look way cooler, you know. Like filling up that space kind of reveals something about where they are or what's going on, or it's telling a story. And that's kind of what I like
Definitely.
about art, you know, is that you can share like either what's going on with you, or you can actually like point something out. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but I think texture is like kind of something I've been way more into in the last like maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, because the scenic painting kind of drives that, you know.
Well, and it creates space too, which is kind of important, you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, it tells you like where they are, what's going on, or
Exactly.
yeah. Um,
Okay, so
I
this
think that's
is
always fun to like figure out new techniques of texture, you know.
totally. So oh, so this next one is I think this is from your monster drawing kind of series that you used to do for that show, right? At
There was like a Halloween show that used to be pretty popular that like a lot of graffiti artists would do, and I think it was called the Monster Show. It was like every year. I think they did it for like 10 years. I don't know if they're still doing it, but I think last year before last was the last time I participated in that.
cool. This one I wanted to include because it shows kind of your interest in organic shapes.
Yeah, those are cool. Yeah, a lot of times I just, I've told you this before, but a lot of times I like to just not think about what I'm doing. I like to tap into to my unconscious, or, just kind of get in this zone where I'm almost like dreaming or meditating, not really thinking about what I'm making. And these are like some automatic kind of art pieces that I've been able to do. And sometimes you get inspired by something like this, and like then you kind of will develop a ideas off of that original kind of sketch. But yeah, to me they're just really fun. Like most of what I do it's just, it has to be fun first, otherwise I don't really
Wanted
see
to
a point to me doing it. Yeah.
there. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of go through a little quickly. Oh, so this is a abstract. You're doing a series of kind of black and white abstracts to get different tones and values with them.
Right.
And then I'm just gonna. This is a nocturnal kind of plant series again that you were working on that I think is really lovely.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was from the same time period.
This is actually a really big painting that you have that it's playing with those same organic shapes, but it also kind of is bringing, I feel like, more of that narrative aspect into it that you're drawn to.
Yeah. That was like an old drawing that I turned into a painting. So like I thought it was really cool and like painted it big.
Yeah. And I think this one was created around the same time, right? The Screaming Girl.
Yeah, that one was made around the same time. I did them both, kind of side by side. I think I had them on the same wall.
Yeah.
They were big. They were like 4 foot by 6 foot. Those are probably two of the biggest pieces I've ever done. Unlike you, painting Gigantor.
um, this is another cool, I think this is a nocturne still life as well, right?
Yeah, that was actually the inside of my room, like kind of looking out the door. Like on the very far left, you can kind of see like there's a little brown stripe. That's the door kind of propped open. And she had these like really crazy pink walls. And yeah, that one actually was inspired by Dick Tracy by Andy Warhol.
Yeah. Oh, but what's the medium of this? Because it's a thicker.
That one is just like a house paint and like spray paint and like an oil stick.
Cool.
Like, I use a lot of mixed media. I was using like a coat hanger and like scratching, like into the paint, and then like rubbing stuff over it and then dripping paint. Yeah, it was fun. That one was a lot of fun.
Cool. Okay. So I'm just gonna keep going. This is a really cool piece. Is that oil or acrylic?
That is oil. Yeah, that's all oil. And
This is
that
a
one is acrylic. And that one actually is like made up. All my paintings are mostly made from, my brain. I don't really look at things a lot. I'll get influenced by stuff, and then I'll try to draw from memory. This one I looked at a Ouija board when I was painting the piece, but kind of imagine the surroundings of it.
cool. This is kind of a fun, almost like mix of topics.
Yeah, and that one's mixed media. It's like oil and acrylic as well. This one is oil and acrylic as well.
This was a series you did, right? That was kind of
So yeah, I mean, this is kind of more comparable to like the current stuff that I'm doing, which is more of a really quick, like almost daily studies with just black and white. Like I just give myself a 8x10 or 9x12 canvas, and I just paint for like a couple hours with black and white only. And now I'm kind of going into adding color into it. But yeah, it was great to kind of start there because you can just play with so many things. It's like, you know, so many possibilities, and like just experimenting with like mixing the paint, like with different levels of liquid and how it moves when you use different brushes or tools. And then layering, I think layering is important in all of painting. And
Mhm.
it's like acrylic you can still layer with, but I think people are more inclined to like just finish the first layer and kind of be like, I'm done. But you can continue to layer up on acrylic and it makes it look way more, like an oil painting almost.
And this one I wanted to show like an example of one of your set designs. So this is really creative, and if I recall, like all of the like some of the boxes will move and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, so you can see on the right, the picture on the right that's got all the characters in front. The boxes are down. Like I ran string through all those different boxes and made like the rows all hooked on aircraft cables. So when someone behind the stage would pull those wires, the boxes would float up and it looked like they were kind of floating. Um, the whole thing was like this big reveal. So that piece in the center like spins around. You can see on the right side, it's got like a bunch of multicolors on it. When it turns around, there was like a chaise lounge kind of old style Victorian couch. Um,
Yeah, that was a
Someone
really
was sitting on
cool.
it. But yeah, that budget was super cheap, so I had to think outside the box, and boxes were kind of like what I went towards.
Yeah, very creative. And then I have another example of a set that you painted on the bottom right here.
Right, right. Yeah, that was a classical theater show, I think. Cherry Orchard, right? Chekhov. Me and another person painted that.
It's really cool, and it must be fun for you to see your paintings kind of come into 3 dimensions and this.
Yeah, I love scenic painting because it's like I don't know, the story's kind of easier to see, like a lot of times. But yeah, it's like paint. It's that opportunity for me to paint like really big because normally a lot of my paintings I don't have a lot of extra space to make huge paintings. But the scenic painting kind of feeds that need that I have to want to paint really big, so then I don't feel like I'm really missing anything. You know.
Yeah. And then finally, just to close off, I have a little picture from your puppet show that you created and directed and starred in. And that's just another way for. Do you feel like for you to kind of delve into storytelling or
Yeah, definitely. I got into the puppet thing though because I wasn't originally like, oh, I want to be a puppeteer. Like, someone approached me and asked me to like paint their sets when I was in college, and so I kind of would go paint the sets. But then they were like, oh, you can paint faces. So then I became like the puppet, like head painter, painting all the faces and mixing the colors for that. And then then I'm doing the sets and the puppet heads and working with other companies. And then um, yeah, that show, I had so much fun making that show. It
yeah.
was cool. But
Well,
yeah, the puppeteering thing was kind of interesting. But I mean, there's so many needs for painters, out there. Like, and that's what I keep. At the beginning, I was saying like learning how to mix colors is kind of the most valuable thing um, that you can do. Spend the time, like uh, really read a book or two about it. Like I like Joseph Albert's like color theory. That was one of my books that I kind of gravitated to like earlier on. And then, you're going to read concepts. They're not going to make a lot of sense. You get the ideas, you see the general basics of how to mix colors, but colors interact next to each other a lot differently. And, experimenting personally, I think is the most valuable, experience is the most valuable teacher. And you can read all you want, but actually just being bold and trying things, I think is the best way to do it.
like practice and practice, right?
Oh yeah, just practice exercises. Like most of my stuff that people don't see is just like, you know, bunch of things that aren't even like finished works. They're just me messing around, practicing, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for doing this today.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad to. Anytime.